Um, Perfect. All right, everybody. So thank you very much for joining. Let's do this thing. There we go. Now everything is open. And again, encourage questions throughout. Makes it more fun. So what we're going to be talking about today is just quick introduction. Who are we? Who am I? Why are we talking? And then we're going to talk about the product, the roadmap, and the vision for physical risks, for transition risks and opportunities, for report, and actually I should say for planning, which I'll talk more about. All right, so let's get into it. So who are we? So my name is Adriel. Hello, I'm the CEO and founder of Beehive. Beehive is an enterprise climate risk management software company, which means we help our customers prepare for and respond to natural disasters and comply with the regulations that require TCFD and IFRS S2 aligned reports. A very easy way to think of us is that if you are aware of a law like California's SB 261 or Europe's CSRD or Australia's ASRS, a consultant might take you 6 months before you're compliant. And Beehive, you can do it in about an hour. And we serve, I know it sounds too good to be true, but we got over 50 customers, many of whom you probably know and recognize, like DocuSign, like much of the KKR portfolio company, law firms like Shepherd Mullen, and so on. Okay, so that's who we are. What we're going to talk about, product roadmap vision for all these different products, for all these different parts of the product. For each one, I'm going to set up the problems or why we are doing what we are doing, what the product does today, and something that are new since I did this last time. It's a monthly event, so we'll try to update people who come very often. The roadmap, so what's coming in the next month or so, we try to keep that relatively short term, and the vision, like where are we headed, what's the point of all this, what might we do over the next few years. Many people who join this are existing customers, prospective customers who want to take a look at this. Sometimes, almost every time we get a competitor joining, they think they're sneaky. They are not. They are welcome. Hello, competitors. Nice to see you all. So let's get into it. So first, we're going to talk about physical risk assessments. I should use the word assessment because this is evolving. So the problem. So physical risk assessments aren't data driven and they are limited in scope. What is a physical risk assessment? Well, what you need to do for follow these laws or just because you want to understand your exposure to these disasters is somehow, some way, take a look at your assets throughout the business, offices, data centers, warehouses, suppliers, and say, are those assets in places that could be impacted by natural disasters today and in the future? And the problem is that doing that manually takes a ton of very technical research. If you have an office north of Los Angeles, how do you find out if it's prone to wildfires or cyclones or heat waves? Well, how do you get historical data? How do you get projections? How might that change? You might say, oh, I remember the LA fires. That must mean it was a big deal. But did it hit my office or was it just sign in that range? Could that change over time? How do you know? Where does it come from? Even if you are able to get that information, like there's some free tools out there. You can Google it. Let's actually do this together. I'm curious what will happen. Like, um, what is the wildfire risk, let's say, in Half Moon Bay, California? So you have your office there. All right, they got moderate risk of wildfires. Like, where does information come from? Some free tools. You can find them in some ways, but it's very rarely auditable and in formats that your company, can use and report on. So that's the problem we're solving here. And by the way, there are free tools. Like what I just pulled up here, actually, First Street is really cool. First Street is a wonderful company. They used to be a nonprofit. Now they're a physical risk tool, and they'll like give you a bunch of information. Really difficult to do, like for your address and whatever other problem. But there are free ways to get this information. So like use them when you can. What you can do inside of Beehive today is the following. You can put in unlimited assets for your business. So this is all of your offices, your suppliers, your facilities, your employees, even your customers, and say, where in the world are these people, are these assets, and how are they impacted by a variety of disasters? So what you can see automatically, let's say you plot all of your assets around North America or Asia or wherever. Immediately, you can see in the context of a risk map, what does wildfire look like in the United States? Or what do cyclones look like in the United States? And let me see just my employees or just my data centers that have medium or high exposure to cyclones in 10 years under the worst climate scenarios. what I just did, and you saw the map refresh and move around, and you can begin to see it a little better if we zoom in here. You'll see a lot of this change. What I just did here normally takes hours and hours and hours of technical research and climate PhDs, which most companies don't have. You're able to do that really quickly. There's a couple important features for folks who are customers to know. So everything that we do has what's called an audit trail. So if you find this asset, we don't just tell you trust us, cyclone risk is medium or flood risk is low, which is what many consultants do. They give you a big spreadsheet that says cyclone risk low, hurricane risk medium, whatever, or there's the thing, wildfire risk medium. We give you what's called an audit trail. And so for any one of these scores, we explain to you why the risk is what it is and how it'll change. So you'll see all of these numbers change as I say, what does this look like in 1 year? What does this look like in 30 years? You see all these numbers here changing because the context for that risk model changed over the course of 1 year or 30 year, or across different scenarios like SSP5 or SSP1. And the reason that this is important to our customers is not necessarily that you will make a different decision knowing that you're in the 90th percentile temperature highs are 91 degrees or 93rd percentile 30-day average is 76 degrees. Like that's very technical information that you have no idea what to do with. The reason these audit trails are important is for audits, as in the name. My teacher used to say, don't use the name in the definition. But nevertheless, the reason audit trails are important is for audits. These are public disclosures. In some countries, like in Australia, they are guided under the rules of their version of the SEC, meaning it is fraudulent to put out misleading information. Investors are making materially impactful decisions on this information. So if you go out and say, oh, we're low risk, don't worry about it, and the investor says, great, good news, I am going to buy your stock, and then all of a sudden a terrible hurricane happens, and in a place where it's never happened before and it destroys your core factory, that investor is going to say, wait a minute, you told me you were low risk from hurricanes. That's why I bought your stock. What changed? So you want this audit trail because if you say that you are low risk from floods, you want to say, well, look, here's the work that we did. Here's why we think we are low risk from floods. Here's what the flood map looks like in this area. That particular asset I clicked, I don't click this stuff here. That particular asset I clicked is not in a high flood risk area. It's near one. But you see, it's not directly in a high flood risk area. So that's why we think this is low. Now, it's not to say a flood will never happen here. We're not trying to predict every single flood or every single hurricane. That is not possible. So don't trust people who tell you that it's possible. But be like a dubious use of your time and money because who knows how valuable that really is. What we're trying to say is, look, we did good work and good science to understand how this all changes. Now, a couple things here in addition. So some people love knowing where our models come from. Anybody here can go to beehiveclimate.com/documentation, public link, learn all about our models. We actually do a webinar every 6 months that talks about how these models are built. Feel free to join that. We have a course. If you want to go to our homepage and you go to courses, you'll find actually 2 classes here. One of them is specifically about physical risk courses. It's launching in 2 weeks. So you can sign up to learn about how climate models work. So I won't get into all that here. So people like to know that. A couple of other things that are really cool here. The first is that for any specific asset, you can download a report of those assets. So what I just downloaded here is the report for that asset, that Azure East US data center, for SSP5 in 30 years. So these are the scores and the context for each of those reports. So this is a really useful feature if you have a facilities manager, or actually we have a customer that large like franchise operation, or they're large corporate who has franchise operations. They don't want to add every single franchisor or every single manager of a store to the software. That's not that useful. They'll just download this report and send it to that person and say, look, are you aware that these risks are the things that exist? And it's actually obviously more useful if you're doing it in a short term. So they might come in here and say, hey, who are my North American assets that have high exposure to cyclones? Cool. And in the short term is what I care most about. So great, this is what it looks like. Let me come in here and let me download the report for that, Puerto Rican factory, whatever. And here's why. And so you send that over to somebody and they're able to have this specific report for that specific asset, which people find very, very helpful. Okay. So that is that. Where else do we want to go here? Okay, reports. So getting a report, we probably overuse the word report. Downloading a report per asset is one thing, but many executives and what your job is to do as part of enterprise climate risk management to share this information with the C-suite or with the board is to present this in charts that they are used to seeing. Charts take a long time to create. You can always export any of this out of the software, and this gives you a giant export. You can go create your own charts. Or you can just come in here and very quickly answer questions like, I want to understand if I'm focused on flooding, which of my assets have high or medium risks if I'm focused on the Middle East or North America or Europe or 10 years or whatever. Which of my assets, if I'm focused just on employees, and employees at risk from heat waves, where do I have employees at high risks globally or by state? You're able to do that stuff really, really quickly. And again, you can export any one of these downloads immediately as a PNG. So that's a super helpful feature there that folks love to use. Someone just asked me, can I create these for short, medium, and long-term horizons? You asked that 2 minutes ago, so where was I? I think I was here. So yes, so we have multiple time horizons. So as you can see here, you can see short, medium, and long-term time horizons, and you can download a report for any one of these and it'll reflect. So this is downloading the report for the 10-year time horizon. The other one I did was for a 30-year time, that's a 1-year time horizon. Here I have 30-year time horizon. So yeah, you can create a report for any time horizon that you want. And you can also see time horizons directly in the software. So you can say, what do wildfires look like in 30 years or in 10 years or in one year under different scenarios? So great question, Ruchi. Um, where was I? Okay. So what do I want to show you? So we did that. Okay, cool. I want to show you three things that are new. So the first is our embedded AI, and it's been getting really smart. So what we've trained this AI on is a couple things. We've trained it on our documentation. So our AI knows exactly how we build models, this whole document, all of these papers, which are like, big giant papers and big giant data sets that I certainly don't understand, but we have some smart data scientists on the team. And we train it on like the results of your risk scores. And you'll see here that it tells you, well, here's like, sounds like you have a factory in Oregon that has got a medium wildfire risk score, and that's one of your assets. That's one of your facilities with the most wildfire risk in the United States. And you have some employees in California with medium wildfire risks. And you could say like, you might want to say, you might want to explain that, like explain how wildfire risk is calculated in the Western United States. Teach me about the model in basic English. And so what's cool here is that it's going to take from the documentation we have and all these fancy papers and like specifically what your risk scores are and the language that you might want to talk to and work with you there. So this AI, we're spending a lot of time making it smarter. It's a little slow. We use very like the higher end models here, but eventually it'll spit out its answer and get there. Which that can be very, very helpful. Okay, we'll wait for that to load before I pull up the next thing just so you can see that answer. The next thing I want to show you is custom equations. Okay. Come on, little B. Think of your answer. Make me look good here. All right, it'll think of it eventually. The next thing I want to show you, actually, you know what? I'm going to open it up somewhere else just to, I don't want to bail on. All right, there we go. Okay, so here's how the AI calculates it, plain English, trains machine learning models on historical records. Here's the data sets we use, actually sources itself. So it'll tell you, like, I think this will point to the data center, explains the scoring. Great. Love that and answer that. Specified it for the Western US. It's sensitive to drivers that the model uses, like dry spells, heat waves, vegetation types that burn easily, human presence. It's actually really smart. That was good. I'm glad it took a while, but I'm glad it gave a good answer. You never know with these robots. Okay. The next thing I wanted to talk about was quantification. So this is a huge, 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 huge challenge for our customers, or for customers who don't use Beehive. Noah just has a question here. Can one modify any parameters based on conservative or proactive risk impacts, factor in contributions to climate risk? Are we stuck with scenarios? Great question. So in Beehive, yeah, stuck with scenarios makes it seem so negative. You are stuck with scenarios. Like this is not built for a PhD in climate science or the actuarial team of an insurance company to adjust these models. This is built for customers who are corporates who want to make decisions off these things or comply with regulations off of these things and not say, well, I think about wildfire risk generation a different way and I prefer that paper instead of that paper. Not the goal here. We are going to make some decisions. I'm certain there will be people in the climate modeling universe who disagree with those decisions and other people who will debate them and other people who like them. All of that is fine. Our goal is not to be everyone's best friend here, but to say, look, we are auditable and we are transparent. I mean, if you want to learn how we do this, go to bihiveclimate.com/documentation and learn about all of it, but like you can't make small adjustments. Um, uh, yeah, so great. But I will show you where you can adjust things. So what we're trying to say here, and this is like a kind of philosophy of Beehive, we say all the time, the magic is not the model. So the value here to a company is not that Beehive thinks wildfires are bad here and not so bad here. That's good. Like it's important to have that information. That's not enough. Where this stuff really matters is in how you use that information to calculate your exposure. So here's what I mean. The way companies might calculate, first of all, why do companies want to calculate risk? Partially it's compliance. So if you're doing CDP, if you're doing IFRS related reporting, you want to report it, you want to actually measure this risk. I'm going to give you my favorite example here. This is NVIDIA's CDP report. And they talk about how they quantify this risk. So they talk about how they have this risk of the increased severity and frequency of extreme weather events like cyclones and floods. They give you a specific example, like Thailand flooding in 2011, delaying fourth quarter shipping. They quantify this risk at $200 million. So that's a big number. And they even tell you how much the cost of responding to this risk is. And most of that cost, as they explain here, goes towards reporting on risks and opportunities from climate change. It's about $2 million. So consulting fees, software and database subscriptions, whatever. So like that is the work that it takes to report on these issues. So companies want to do it and they spend a lot of money doing it. What BI tries to make easy is to say every company thinks about this differently. So Noah, your question was like, can we be more proactive or more conservative about how we think about that? You can do that in how you calculate the impacts of these risks. So we're going to tell you risks are high or risks are low, but you can tell us if you care about that. So for example, what you're able to do here, say, how do you calculate risk for an office? Well, you might want to do cost per closure day times the closure days per year. But maybe another company disagrees. Maybe for another company, the way they want to calculate risk to an office is different. And so you're able to come in here into these equations and say, well, I think about the cost per closure day times the closure days per year, but I also think about the repair cost per asset because it costs me money to fix an asset. And maybe you want to add in like some insurance cost or whatever else. You can do whatever you want here. There's a lot of flexibility in this particular equation builder. So, all right, great. You want to do it that way? Do it that way. You'll see this equation changed. You see now you can add a repair cost per asset. Maybe you spend a lot of money on your offices, so it'd be a lot to repair. Maybe you don't. Maybe they're all WeWorks, and so you don't really care. Maybe offices are really core to your business, so you think you lose a lot of money when they're closed. Maybe they don't, and everyone can work remotely, and so it's not an issue. Maybe you're really concerned about wildfires, and so you want to say the risk of wildfires is really high. Maybe you are concerned about heat waves, or maybe you're not. Maybe you want to change heat waves to a zero, or maybe you're really worried about cyclones. Like you're able to have control over that. And what that means is you, as the company, whose job it is to say, your in my job, our job, BI's job, say cyclones are likely to happen in this area and likely to be destructive. Your job is to say, I care a lot or I don't care a lot. And you can do that all in here. And you'll see when I save these settings, this number went way down. This used to be 200 something, now it's 170 something, and the office number specifically went way, way, way down. So that's a really cool way to do this. There's a lot of work that we're putting into this. On the roadmap is, actually, I want to write this so I don't forget to show you next time, is redesign of equations and custom variables. I will show you all that. We're basically, right now you're limited to the variables that we allow you to that we pre-input for you. You will soon be able to create your own variable. So maybe you think about it in like dollars lost per day or dollars lost per week or number of employees who can't work per year, whatever. You'll have a lot of flexibility there. Ruchi asked if ERM has its own metric or equation, can we custom add that even if you don't have it in the library? Great question, 100%. Again, the goal here is not to tell you the answers, to give you the tools to find those answers. So what you're able to do is set what do you consider your materiality thresholds, and anyone can set their own. Is it a dollar amount? Is it the percentage of annual revenue? Maybe you're NVIDIA and nothing's material unless it reaches $100 million, or maybe you're a small business and like anything above $1 million is material. So you can set all that, or you can do a percentage of revenue. And Ruchi, like you asked, you can create your own custom equations and save those. So you'll see, I mean, I have 1,000 of these. The ones that are made by Beehive are the default templates. The ones that I made are brand new. So create a new equation. You can play around. You're like offices, test, whatever. Do whatever you want there. So you create your own equations. The goal is to take, if any of you have done this before with a consultant, the goal is to take their process that they charge a lot of money for, take a long time to do, and put that in your hands with some opinions of our own. Meaning you should, like, it's not rocket science. It just takes a lot of time and you haven't done this work before, so you need some context. So we give you that context, we give you that advice, we'll work with you on this, but you own the process. And one of the things that customers love here is that everything is exportable. Meaning you could just click this, export it, and you export this big Excel file that for every asset shows the equation you used, your exposure, all the parameters you set up. And what this allows you to do is to have a conversation with your audit team who wants to understand how you're coming up with these numbers before you report them, and your finance team who will help you come up with these equations. Because finance maybe doesn't want to be in the software, but they definitely want to be in a spreadsheet. Those finance folks love spreadsheets. And they want to say, you know what, like our Mumbai office, we just closed that actually. So that should be a zero. And you'll see that number changed. Or maybe they'll be like, oh, we're expanding Delhi. You didn't know that. That's going to be a really important office. We're going to make it much more impactful. Or we're going to say, you know what, like we did all this, you don't know this, but we invested in wildfire safety. Great. We're going to reduce our exposure from wildfires to a smaller number. You saw that number change. So like you're able to export it all for auditability and transparency, which is what's very popular here. Well, no, my light turned off in my office. Let's get the sensor going. Where's my, there we go. Okay. We are back. All right, great questions. What else? Snapshots. Okay, let's talk about snapshots. So this is on the roadmap. This is coming out in like it's out. Oh, it's sort of out. It's more formally coming out in like a week. So right now, one limitation of Beehive is that you upload your assets, and that's what they are. But if you want to do this on an annual basis, because you want to do a risk assessment on an annual basis, or you want to keep this up to date because your employees come and go or you open new offices, you basically have to edit this constantly. So you'd be like, oh, I closed all my offices and I'm opening new ones. Great. You got to come in here, select it, delete these offices, go and upload new offices. But then you like lose that version of your business. So you lose that audit trail from the past. And this is, offices, I have 57 of them in here, but employees, I have 520 in here. Like that's really hard to do. You don't want to lose it, whatever, it's a problem. So we created this concept called portfolios and snapshots. And for the customers on here, you'll be able to use this in about a week. A portfolio is like what your business looks like today. So this is your current portfolio. Today, this is live and this is up to date. These are my employees, these are my offices, these are my data centers, whatever. What you'll be able to do is to create a snapshot and say, well, this is what my business was January 2026. I'm going to create a snapshot and continue. And what's changed? Well, maybe I want to say all my employees are new. Or maybe I want to say all my contractors, volunteers, and employees are new, but my executives stayed the same. I know my executives didn't change. And maybe all my facilities have changed as well because I've opened a bunch of stores, but I know my suppliers haven't, whatever. So you can update all this. It confirms, make sure you clear the right thing, whatever, and then you update your portfolio. I don't know if that'll work actually. Like I said, a bunch of bugs we're fixing this week. And what this will allow you to do is two really cool things. The first is keep a up-to-date version of your company in Beehive, meaning as you run risk assessments, and I'll explain why this is going to be valuable in a moment when I talk about the last bit of here on risk planning. As you think about what risks might happen to me this quarter, what are my current concerns, how might the wildfire happening now impact my business, you want to have those assets up to date, and this will allow you to do that. This will also allow you to not lose your audit trail on all of this stuff. And this is going to be really important because as these laws continue to gain steam, I know it seems like they're up and down right now, but fast forward 3 or 4 years, and they will have been around for 3 or 4 years, and they'll be much more solidified, especially in places like Australia, where it's run by their version of the SEC, in the EU, where you can go to jail for misleading this stuff. We'll see what happens in the US over the next couple of years. But you want to have all of this auditable. Like you want to have this data set. And so you want to be able to update everything, but you don't want to have spreadsheets. Like you want a version of the company. So if an auditor comes in and says, hey, why in 2024 did you report X? You want to say, well, great. Let me go to the 2024 version of my company that I saved back then or whatever, and let me open that up. And you'll be able to open that up and pull up all those risk scores. So this is going to be really, really cool. It was really hard to build. A lot of making sure all the data is accurate and nothing gets lost. It took us a long time to get right, and it is almost out. So excited for this. Okay, those are snapshots. Anything else? Okay, last thing here is vision. I won't spend too much time here, but basically the IFRS or the CSRD framework kind of, or maybe it's IFRS framework, identifies 28 hazards that might impact a company. And some of these are very obvious and really impact you: hurricanes, wildfires, heat waves. Some of them are like soil erosion. I don't know, like if you're a food company, that really, really matters, but most other companies, it does not matter. Saline intrusion, I don't think really matters to most people, or they don't even know what to do with that information. But what you have to do for CSRD, or for at least IFRS compliance, is say, like, you have considered all 28 of these things, and you have modeled the most material without undue effort. So eventually, we want more and more and more of these inside the software. You'll see the green ones are the ones we currently have. The yellow ones are the ones we'll be working on this year. The red ones have no plan. I guess a lot of these should be red. But you'll be able to do more and more of these over time. Be great if you can do all 28 here in a couple years. I think that's a limited value. Like, the amount of money it would cost us to do avalanche modeling and the amount of usage that we get from customers. I don't know. We'll see. Sorry, is it called diminishing returns? Diminishing returns. But you'll be able to do more and more and more of these in here over time. All right. You're still with us. There we go. We haven't lost anyone yet. Let's talk about transition risks. Okay. So the problem we're solving here is that tabletop transition risk exercises are time consuming and they are not database. What you need to do, for those not too familiar here, boy, do I have a lot of sources, is basically look transition risks. Is basically think about your business and say, what risks and which opportunities might impact. Wow, all of a sudden we had a surge. Oh, I guess the 2:30 meetings ended. Hello, all of a sudden we have 5 new people join. What's up, everybody? You got the recording for the first half. Welcome. Thank you for coming. So we're talking about transition risks and opportunities right now. So what you need to do is say what transition risks and which opportunities are relevant to my business. And traditionally, the way a consultant might do this is to understand your business. Hey, tell me about yourself. Let me read your 10K. Let me read your ESG report. Let me interview a bunch of your executives. And then give me a few months. I'm going to come back to you with risks and opportunities that might be relevant. That's fine, but it takes a long time. It takes a long time for a consultant to understand a new business. It takes a long time for them to just have discussions about what risks and opportunities might be relevant. It takes a long time for them to put the deck together, because that's a long time for everything. What you're able to do inside of Beehive is really cool. So we basically trained our AI to be like a consultant. And we said, hey, AI, go understand this business intimately. Go understand what might impact this industry. Go read its 10K, go read its ESG report, go read what its competitors have said about these topics, and then tell us what risks and opportunities you think are relevant to this business. For each one of these things, I want you to tell us how this might impact the company. So explain your logic to me. and then show us peers and other companies that have said something similar. This is a huge amount of like organizing this data. And so now what our customers can do is immediately, not after a 4 month engagement or lots of workshop and interviews, but immediately after AI learns about the business, so 12 seconds later, say, oh yeah, this makes sense. This is a risk that might impact me. Oh yeah, and CVS is my biggest competitor. Like if they said it, it probably makes sense for me to say it. I'm going to accept it. Or I don't know, here, I don't think it's a good reason. And no, I don't care what Expedia says. They're not really in my industry. I'm going to reject it. And I'm going to give a reason why. And so all that's in the audit. You see that turn to red. So that's like a really amazing way to think about this, which is the goal of the transition is to get to the stage in which we're reviewing these risks. It is not in understanding the business and exploring it. It is in figuring out which of these are material risks and what you should do about it. And so you get here really quickly, which our customers love. And then the last step here, I'll show you more of this, but the AI drafts disclosure language, and then you're able to basically say, Ruchi, this goes back to your question about ERM having its own metrics and its own impact parameters. You'll see those highlighted. That thing in black right there is what the customer said are your thresholds for all these things. And you can adjust this. You can adjust the language that it's going to report on. So what's new is we've cleaned up the benchmarking. So for all you one of these, you would see like what a peer has said that's very similar to this. So this around employee expectations, as is this. So it might impact your ability to attract and retain the best talent. So you say, all right, great, that's said by other people. And this is cool. I feel like most people, even customers, don't see this. If you click this, it opens up their report. And we've cited where you'll find this. So you can go to page 11 and you'll find on page 11, this was one of these was the risks. I think this one. One of these was the risk that they talked about. And so, yeah, right here. So this is the risk. Yeah, page 11. There you go. And so you'll be able to like see that source specifically, which is just helpful for you to like benchmark, understand better about why your competitors or peers said what they said, show that to your boss, whatever. So that's just a small little button that most people miss. Okay. What's on the roadmap? So I don't have this designed yet, but what's on the roadmap is basically the ability to do NFGS scenarios. So you have to do this, or NGFS, I always forget. Network for Greening the Financial System. There you go. NFGS scenarios. So basically, you have to comply with IFRS, and this is why this stuff gets so expensive with consultants. You have to say, well, I want to do transition risks in scenarios, kind of like I did the physical risk. So how impactful might the risk of increased regulations be in a universe where every country is passing laws around climate? Well, I might have more laws to comply with and I'll have to spend a lot of money on it. But that same risk of the cost of complying with laws under a universe where no country is passing laws and everyone stopped caring about climate change, well, like that particular risk won't be an issue. Other risks might be a higher issue. So it'll be really cool in here very soon is you'll be able to select the specific NFGS scenario that you want to use in this assessment. And again, all those AI tools, all that auditability is going to be in there. So again, the value here is it's not better or worse than a consultant. I think it's the same quality as a consultant. It just happens in 3 minutes instead of 3 months. And again, a lot of transparency in there will continue to be in there. And then the vision here is some quantification. So what we want to be able to do is to say, hey, right now, this is kind of a gut thing. Like, do you think this is going to be 5 million or more of impact? Do we think it's going to be less than 1 million? And we have a conversation about it and we click one or the other. Well, it'd be great if we can quantify some transition risks. This is really hard to do for some of them. Like, I don't know, there's what employee expectations for corporate sustainability. How do you quantify potential financial impact of employees not picking you? It's really hard to do. Some of them, specifically carbon tax, is much, much easier or much more straightforward. You can say, well, we know what your emissions are today. We think we know what they can grow to. We know what the carbon tax could be under one scenario or another. So multiply your emissions times $200 or $50 or whatever, and you get the price of a carbon tax. We can do that, and we will do that at some point this year. Okay, that's transition risks. Again, just a reminder for the folks who just joined, but chat is open and Q&A is open for any questions. Oh, someone just asked, Ruchi, my friend Ruchi. Are there any around where the tools give guidance on physical risk mitigation strategies? Oh my God. Okay. You're jumping the gun, but I love it. Let's jump to it. Okay. Where do we begin? Where do we begin? Ruchi's question is wonderful. Basically, it is the core of the idea behind Beehive. So this is going to get meta. But when I started researching this industry a couple of years ago, there's a lot of wonderful climate risk software companies out there. You can go Google them. I showed you First Street earlier, Jupiter, Climate AI, whatever. I know it's best advice not to point out your competitors. My point is they exist. They're great. They're great at modeling. The core thesis behind Beehive is that the magic is not the models. The point is not, I have a better model than you have. I am more correct than you are. That is not the point of any of this. The point of this is so what? You got a model, you input your assets, you got a risk score. So what? Well, our first so what is you can now comply with this law. You can generate a TCFD report. I'll jump back to this, but punchline, we draft your TCFD report with AI. Um, you can, that was the first punchline. But where we're headed is how can you talk about risk mitigation strategies? So I'm going to show you something that we're developing. And this again will begin rolling out for beta customers probably in 2 or 3 weeks, and then will be across the platform in 2 months or so. But it's what we call the start of the risk planning module. I'm going to show you that here. So a risk assessment is fine. Being able to say, I have 107 assets at high heat wave risk. All right, great, fine. Being able to say the cost of heat waves might be $71 million, a little better. Now it's like, that's a scary number. Because if that 107 meant you lose $40 because it's your 107 like empty warehouses, who cares? But if it's 107 costs, a little better. But still, so what? Like, so what do I do about it? So what do I need to know? Who needs to know what? What do I care? That is the big question that we are focused on helping customers answer this year. Now, you can do some of that in the AI. So you can do some of like, I saw I have some assets at high flood risk. What should I do about that? So this AI is trained on some work, and so we'll be able to do that. But that's fine. Like that's not ideal because ChatGPT can basically do a version of that too. Oh, that's interesting. Didn't give me anything relevant. I gotta figure out why. Let's figure that out. Let's go straight to an engineer. Um, we'll do that in a second. Um, but regardless, that's not the point. That was not supposed to work well. What we are beginning to build out is what we call risk planning. And there's going to be a whole suite of tools over the course of this year that are getting a lot of investment. This is like early beta. What you'll be able to do is to say in a given period of time, so let's say I'm doing Q1 planning, January to March, or select whatever period of time you want here. Which disasters are likely to happen in places where I do business? If they did happen, which of my assets would be impacted and how much money would I lose? Meaning, in January through March, it looks like wildfires and cyclones cost me money. They cost me a total, could cost me a potential $34 million. I have 2,200 assets across 12 regions that could be impacted. And wildfires might cost me 32 million of that, and cyclones might cost me 1.5. Okay, let's click in and understand that better. In what regions might cyclones happen between January and March? I don't have the global typhoon universe memorized, and I don't know where all my assets are. What should I be worried about as I plan for January through March? Well, it looks like the Northeast Pacific is where hurricanes might be the most impactful at over $5 million. You see this as a high risk because they're above my materiality threshold, Ruchi, that we set earlier of a $5 million threshold, whereas Eastern Pacific is 700,000. That is between my thresholds, that is medium risk, and so on and so forth. And specifically in the Northeast Pacific, here are the assets that I have. I have some executives, I have some volunteers, some contractors. You'll be able to filter, you'll be able to say which offices do I have. These are my offices in the Northeast Pacific region, whatever. And we can give you examples of why. So we can say, well, if you don't believe us, like if you don't appreciate, not appreciate, that's not what I mean, but if it's hard for you to visualize that hurricanes happen in the whatever region I was in, at this time, the Northeast Pacific or whatever I said, Northeast Pacific at that given time. Well, here's examples of actual hurricanes that have happened in that area. And if Hurricane Ian, which happened in January of 2014, happened again, this is how much money you would lose. Like, this is the potential impact based on all that work we did with custom equations that you saw earlier, all that quantification we did. Like, you might lose $5 million if something like Hurricane Ian happens again. This is really, really cool because what you will be able to bring to your quarterly risk meeting is saying, hey, I am most worried about hurricanes in the Northeast Pacific. I think these hurricanes could impact all of these assets. I am most concerned about, let me do potential impact. I'm most concerned about, I guess, about, these offices because they have $300,000 in impact. I'm least concerned about whatever assets are towards the bottom. But I have some executives, do I know what to do if my executive is going to be impacted by this? Whatever, I don't have executives here. Do I know what to do if executives are going to be impacted here? And so you're going to be able to like see all that and have really specific plans. So I'm really, really excited about this. This is gonna be used by beta customers in the next couple of weeks to allow you to come in with specifics. This is a huge amount of data that we organize that is like impossible to do without dedicated software. So I'll be excited about this. And that is the beginning of your answers. Ruchi, your team will be able to say, what am I thinking about this quarter? Do I have good plans here? But the next step is where this needs to go. So your question was, is there anything around mitigation strategies? Like that's where this needs to go. The goal here is by the summer for you to be able to like run a quarterly risk meeting and say, hey, what am I thinking about Q2 or Q3 or whatever I'm planning for? Who's impacted? And great. If you have discovered that you are most your whatever assets we say your offices or your executives are most impacted by it, what's the plan? What happens if a hurricane or what happens if a wildfire impacts Eastern North America like it very often does, and these 17 assets you have are impacted? Well, do you have a plan for what your executives would do, or how you evacuate them? Do you have a plan for your contractors? Do you plan for what every boss should say to their colleagues? Do you have a plan for um, what your office evacuation policy is? Whatever. Building those plans and basing them initially off of the business continuity work I'm sure your companies do already, and getting AI to review that and to have that plan organized for you to be able to say, yup, I have good governance over it. Everyone's aware of what they should do, for you to share that plan. And then eventually, this is not this year, but eventually the vision here is to say, there's a hurricane happening right now. These are your 304 employees, 6 offices, 4 suppliers, and 19,000 customers that are impacted by this hurricane. Here are the specific plans you have to respond to that disaster. Reach out to this person, evacuate this office, move this inventory around, contact these customers and help them stay safe. And we can begin to build all those workflows and communications and reports and summaries and financial pullouts for your CFO or your chief HR officer or whatever, all inside of the software. So that's a big part of the vision here that we are, as you can tell, very, very excited about. Ruchi said she likes this approach and get tactical. Like, let's make sure we have insurance coverage, backup systems. Exactly, 100%. Like, this gives you something really specific to look at. So you say, if you're a giant corporation, our smallest customer has $499 million in annual revenue. Almost there. Our largest has, I don't know, like 15 billion or something. These are large global companies, like all you work for or consult for large global organizations. This is just, you can't, it's not stuff you keep in your head. You don't know what's happening in Japan or what's happening in Spain or what's happening in South America in January versus June. Like, you have no idea. You have no idea how much money that would cost you. Is that a big office? Is that a small office? Do you have good insurance? Do you have a new roof or an old roof? Whatever. All of that could be stored inside a Beehive, and you'll be able to use that to pull out relevant information. So we jumped ahead a little bit. Let's see if I covered everything. I kind of talked about the problem. I talked about the product and the roadmap. Yeah, I said what should we do about this? More hazards. So right now we cover wildfires and floods. We're going to continue to expand that and just make this. So it's still buggy. We're not releasing this yet, but it will be out in a couple of weeks. and making all that really, really good. And the other thing I'm kind of excited for is reporting on this stuff. So how do you can I get a quick, like, for people out here, can you just comment your role? I'm curious if it's sustainability, like corporate sustainability leader or consultant or finance person. Just curious to see who's in the room. You could send it to me directly or comment broadly. I see corporate sustainability leader, awesome. Yeah, curious who everyone else is. The reason for that is because consultant, cool. How you present this information matters, right? I don't think this is the best way to present this information. Whether you're a consultant, like a couple of messaged me, whether you're the corporate sustainability person, um, a lead analyst in the climate tech industry, cool. Lead analyst, it's a cool job. I'm not the lead anything. This is not the best way to show. This is messy and cluttered and too much information. I want to build AI. There's this really amazing app. I'm obsessed with this app. If you talk to anyone on my team, they'll tell you how obsessed I am with this app. It's called Gamma.ai or Gamma.app, excuse me. And you can create presentations with AI, and they're beautiful. What I want to do is embed Gamma into Beehive via an API. And you should be able to take this information and export it and basically say, so I didn't prepare this at all. It's all going to be very live, but like it'll be a single button, but behind that button will be a prompt that says like generate a 3-slide report about how hurricanes might impact all of my employees around the world in Q2 2026 with data points and dollar values make up figures. As obviously in our version it wouldn't make up figures, but just to show you what the experience could look like, and again this would all be like inside a Beehive, whatever. It takes these, this is an amazing app and everybody should use it. It's like $10 a month and it's the coolest thing ever. It'll generate a really good PowerPoint for you in 2 seconds, and it looks really beautiful. And if that could have our prompts, our contacts, our dollar figures, your branding, your actual data in here, and put that into this report, like that should save you time, not only to get that information like you can do today, but to actually communicate it to the right person. And so, imagine if these were like real dollar values and real data points and the real map of whatever. And it pulled all that and it put that in here, and like the prompts were more thoughtful. Like, I mean, this blows my mind every time. Like you saw what I just did. This is just the coolest thing on earth. This got this is one of those annoying startups that like got to $200 million in revenue in 3 months or something. So I'm annoyed at them. But nevertheless, oh wow, we have people joining with 4 minutes to go. Hello, thank you for coming. All right, so that's part of the vision here is around reports. Cool. I want to finish up on one thing in our final few minutes here, just to touch on it. But the last feature here is reporting. So what you are able to do today is AI can draft your TCFD report. And what that report looks like in its final version, I won't get into, we have some other webinars that are like deep dives on TCFD, but this is the final version. This is a customer called LiveRamp. They use Beehive. You kind of know that they use Beehive because they talk about a AI-powered ECRM software. Anytime you read AI-powered ECRM, that is Beehive. Think we are the only ones who do that. And so whatever, all this is generated inside a Beehive, and the way that actually looks is you come in here and it draws from all the risk assessments that we did, all these documents that you gave us, all this context, all this quantification stuff, and it takes that and it generates responses here, and that's really great. But then two important features is version control. So this is great. Like GCs and audit teams love this. Where you can say, well, AI drafted the first one. It doesn't work while you're like in the middle of writing it. So let's say version. You can say like AI drafted the first one, and then some edits were made, some edits were made, some edits were made, some edits were made. I like this version more. That's my boss, but this person is my lawyer. I'm going to combine them into here, whatever. And then you can also benchmark. So you can say, well, I care a lot about what CVS says. Here's how CVS answered this question, or this question, or this question. And oh yeah, this is great. What's the context for that? Let me click in like you could before and see CVS's full disclosure. Oh, that's an interesting bug. I'll fix that. Wonder if that's happening for everyone. It wasn't happening earlier. Let's see. Oh, that one works. It just looks like just CVS is the issue. So you can do some of that. And where this is headed is, let me pull this up really quickly. I thought I had this pulled up, but I do not. Where this is headed is you will be able to generate multiple types of reports, including like my gamma idea I just shared with you all. But that'll look a little bit like this. This is a early design, and we're beginning building this next week, where you will be able to create. There you go. So your reports dashboard, right now, what this looks like is you just click TCFD and you start working on your TCFD report. But very soon you'll come in here, you'll be able to see every report you created in here, again, for audit purposes or for like emulating for others. You'll click new report. We will be able to support within a couple months CCFD and IFRS. Eventually we'll do things like CDP and those AI reports that I showed you, and then you'll start working on your IFRS report or your TCFD report. So that's the last thing happening there. All right. What did somebody write? Thank you for the presentation. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. That person called me a mini celebrity with the team because of the LinkedIn post. So there we go. I look forward to seeing you in New York as well. Good to see you, Sid. I'll keep the LinkedIn post going. If you don't follow me on LinkedIn, you probably shouldn't. I literally posted about Frozen yesterday, the movie. I have two daughters, and there was like context. It was randomly talking about Frozen, but it wasn't not random either. But nevertheless, I try to keep it fun. Okay. Wow. What an hour. What an hour. Thank you everybody for joining. Really quick, because there's more questions before you log off. Everyone's really don't log off yet. There's 1 second. We do this every single week, pretty much. I'm skipping next week because I have some stuff going on, but we have amazing interviews coming up. Well, actually, you can go to see our whole calendar. How do you see our whole calendar? Oh yeah, here's our whole calendar of events. We do this almost every week, but we have some awesome ones coming up. I just sent you an interview with the ESG partner at a large law firm called DWT. We're interviewing Workiva's VP of Sustainability and Sustainable Solutions in a couple weeks. We're going to do another one of these, and then I won't send you all these, but you can check them out. We're interviewing the sustainability person for Braze, for Lyft, for Universal Music Group, for Sobrato. We got some other really, really good ones coming up. So that we are currently scheduling. So please check those out. All right. There's still a bunch of you here, so I'll sit for a minute. If you have any questions or ideas, I am happy to answer them. Thank you, Simon. I appreciate you joining. Yeah, thank you, Sid. Appreciate it. All right. Well, I'll sit here in case someone has a question until the last person logs off. Okay. Well, let's assume that's it. All right, guys. Thank you all very much. Appreciate you. Oh, there you go. Someone asked. Good timing. What's your approach to so what for NGFS scenarios and transition risk, carbon tax approach first? Yeah. I think the reason I paused is because I got to find a more politically correct way of saying this, but I don't think most executives care about the results of a transition risk assessment. I am yet to find somebody who's gone through this process and really, 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 really valued the results. Quite the contrary, I found that the transition risk assessment has, for most people, been the most frustrating experience with their consultant. It's taken the longest, and their execs are annoyed to be in the room talking about what may or may not happen in 30 years. It's hard to do. But you got to do it. So we try to make that fast, easy, auditable, reasonable, high quality, so that if something comes up as a material issue, you bring it up. So that's how we do the so what. It's like let's get to the so what as quickly as possible, which means I know identified 10 risks. 9 of them you should report on because you have to, but like no one's really going to pay attention. But one of these, as you think about it, could be an issue or could be an opportunity and a big strategy. So let's talk about that as quickly as possible. the reason that we're doing carbon tax approach first is not counterintuitively, maybe not because we actually think it's that so what. I think if you talk to most CFOs right now, they don't really believe a carbon tax is a material issue for them in the next 5 years, and they don't really do planning much more beyond that for most enterprises. Um, but it's easy to quantify, meaning it's clear, it's specific. You can set some rules around it. Um, so that's kind of why we're starting with carbon tax, and we'll see. I'm not sure yet that I have a very strong perspective about how to make that stuff as useful as I'd like it to be, and so I won't force the issue until we think of something. And hey, open to ideas. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining for the hour. Thank you for all the good questions. Talk soon.